kill me.
That nunchaku spin wasn't rehearsed. The kicks, they broke cameras. And the fight in the Colosseum, it almost never happened because Rome didn't want Bruce Lee there. This is The Way of the Dragon, and nothing about it played by the rules. Bruce Lee didn't just star in this film. He wrote it, directed it, produced it, fought in it, and bet his entire career on it. These are 20 weird facts about The Way of the Dragon. And the bonus, there's a reason Chuck Norris never fought Lee again. Let's break some boards. Number 1. Before The Way of the Dragon, Bruce Lee was famous, but not free. He'd starred in The Big Boss and Fist of Fury, massive hits that made him a household name across Asia. But he didn't control them. Directors told him where to stand, producers cut his scenes, studios owned his image. And Lee, he was done with that. So, when Golden Harvest offered him another film, he made one demand: total control. Not just acting, everything. Writing, directing, choreography, final cut. The studio hesitated. Giving an actor that much power, especially one with zero directing experience, was a gamble that could sink them. But Lee didn't blink. He told them if they wanted him, they'd get all of him or none of him. Golden Harvest took the risk. They gave him a small budget, a tight schedule, and a warning. If this fails, you're done. Lee didn't flinch. He flew to Rome with a handwritten script, a small crew, and a vision that nobody else understood. He cast himself as a country bumpkin, not a martial arts master. He filled the film with comedy, not just action. And he decided the climax would take place in the most iconic location he could find, a 2,000-year-old arena where gladiators once fought to the death. The Way of the Dragon wasn't just Lee's directorial debut, it was his declaration of independence, and he was willing to risk everything to make it his way. Number 2. Bruce Lee didn't write The Way of the Dragon in a writer's room, surrounded by studio executives and script doctors. He wrote it alone, by hand, in his apartment in Hong Kong. No computer, no typewriter, just pen and paper. And he didn't spend years on it. He wrote the entire screenplay in a matter of weeks, fueled by frustration, ambition, and a vision that had been building inside him for years. Lee wanted to tell a different kind of kung fu story, not the revenge tale or the historical epic. He wanted something lighter, something that showed his personality, his humor, his philosophy. So, he created Tang Lung, a naive country boy from Hong Kong who travels to Rome to help his cousin's restaurant fight off local gangsters. The character was awkward, polite, didn't speak the language, and had no idea how to navigate a foreign city. But when pushed, he was unstoppable. It was a reflection of Lee himself, an outsider in Hollywood, underestimated and dismissed until the moment he showed what he could do. The script was raw, personal, and unlike anything else in martial arts cinema at the time. There were no ancient masters or mystical training montages, just a man, his fists, and a whole lot of trouble. When Lee finished writing, he didn't send it to the studio for notes. He just packed his bags and flew to Rome. The script was done. Now it was time to fight. Number 3. When Bruce Lee arrived in Rome to shoot The Way of the Dragon, he didn't bring a massive crew or a Hollywood-level production team. He brought a skeleton crew, most of them from Hong Kong, none of them familiar with shooting in Europe. There was no location manager, no permits lined up, no Italian fixers to smooth things over with local authorities. Lee figured they'd work it out on the fly. They didn't. From day one, the production hit walls. Italian officials didn't understand why a Chinese film crew wanted to shoot in their historic landmarks. Restaurant owners refused to let them film inside. Police showed up to shut down scenes shot without permission. And the language barrier made everything worse. Lee spoke English and Cantonese. The crew spoke Cantonese. The Italians spoke Italian. Nobody could communicate properly, so instructions got lost, locations got mixed up, and tempers flared. At one point, Lee wanted to shoot a fight scene in a public park. No permits, no clearance, just show up and film. When local authorities arrived and started yelling, Lee's translator panicked and told him they were being arrested. They weren't. But for 20 minutes, Lee genuinely believed his entire production was about to be shut down and his crew thrown in Italian jail. They talked their way out? Barely. But from that moment on, Lee realized that directing wasn't just about creative vision. It was about survival. Every single day in Rome was a fight. and not the kind he'd trained for. Cameras, permits, language, logistics, all of it chaos. But somehow, Lee kept moving forward, because giving up wasn't in his vocabulary. Number 4. The Colosseum fight wasn't just the climax of the film, it was the reason Lee wanted to shoot in Rome. Before writing a single word of the script, he knew that's where the final battle had to take place. The problem? Italian authorities said no. The Colosseum was a protected historical site, one of the most recognizable landmarks in the world. They didn't allow film crews inside, especially not for a fight scene involving flying kicks and wrestling moves. Lee applied for a permit anyway. He was rejected. He applied again. Rejected. He tried going through official channels, unofficial channels, anyone who could get him inside. Nothing worked. The Italian government was firm. No martial arts movie was going to use their ancient arena as a backdrop. So, Lee made a decision. He'd shoot it anyway. Not legally, not with permission, but guerrilla style. He hired a small local crew who knew how to move fast and avoid security. They smuggled camera equipment inside, dressed as tourists. Lee and Chuck Norris showed up separately, blending in with the crowd. And when the moment was right, they started filming. No lights, no permits, no safety net. Just 2 fighters, 1 camera, and security guards who had no idea what was happening until it was too late. They shot for hours, moving quickly, grabbing as many angles as they could before someone shut them down. And when officials finally realized what was happening and started approaching, Lee and the crew packed up and ran. They didn't get caught, but it was close. The entire Colosseum fight, one of the most iconic scenes in martial arts history, was filmed illegally. Because Bruce Lee wasn't just breaking bones on screen, he was breaking rules behind it.
Excitement.
Number 5. Chuck Norris didn't audition for The Way of the Dragon. He wasn't a famous actor. He wasn't even trying to be in movies. He was a martial arts champion, running karate schools in Los Angeles, teaching celebrities and competing in tournaments. Bruce Lee knew him from the martial arts circuit. They'd sparred together, shared techniques, mutual respect between 2 fighters who understood the craft. When Lee started planning The Way of the Dragon, he needed a final opponent, someone who looked believable, someone who could actually fight, not just throw stage punches. So he called Norris and made him an offer. Fly to Rome, fight me in the Colosseum, get paid, and maybe this opens some doors for you. Norris hesitated. He had businesses to run, students to teach, no acting experience, and 0 interest in being on camera. But Lee was persistent. He told Norris, "You won't have to act, just fight." That was enough. Norris agreed, flew to Rome, and stepped into the Colosseum with no script, no rehearsal, just Bruce Lee and a camera. The fight wasn't choreographed in the traditional sense. Lee gave him rough ideas, a few key moments, but most of it was improvised, 2 real martial artists testing each other for real. And when the cameras rolled, something magical happened. The fight felt raw, genuine, brutal. You could see the respect between them, the skill, the intensity. Norris didn't need acting lessons. He just needed to be himself, and that performance launched his entire career. But here's the thing, Norris never fought Bruce Lee on screen again, because after that day in the Colosseum, he knew. There was only one Bruce Lee, and nobody, not even Chuck Norris, could match him twice.
The Way of the Dragon.
Number 6. Bruce Lee did his own stunts. That's not surprising. Every martial artist in Hong Kong cinema did their own stunts, but Lee took it further. He didn't just perform the choreography. He designed it, filmed it, and edited it himself because he didn't trust anyone else to capture martial arts the way he saw it. Most fight scenes in 1970s cinema were shot wide, from a distance so you could see the whole body. Lee hated that. He wanted close-ups, rapid cuts, angles that put you inside the fight, feeling every punch, every kick, every shift in weight. So, he'd choreograph a sequence, then grab the camera and show the cinematographer exactly where to stand, what to focus on, how to move. The crew didn't always understand. They'd argue that certain angles wouldn't work, that you couldn't cut that fast, that audiences needed to see more. Lee didn't care. He'd studied film obsessively, watched westerns, samurai movies, boxing matches frame by frame, analyzing what made violence feel real on screen. And he knew that speed, precision, and rhythm mattered more than seeing everything. During one fight scene in a park, Lee insisted on a specific camera angle that required the operator to crouch low and pan upward as Lee kicked. The cinematographer refused, said it was awkward, wouldn't look good. Lee didn't argue. He just grabbed the camera, handed it to someone else, and said, "Do it anyway." When they watched the dailies, the crew fell silent. The angle worked. It was brutal, dynamic, unlike anything they'd seen. From that moment on, nobody questioned Lee's vision. He wasn't just directing a movie, he was inventing a new language for martial arts cinema, and every rule he broke became the standard everyone else followed. Number 7. The nunchaku scene, the one where Bruce Lee casually spins his weapon in the restaurant while intimidating a room full of gangsters, wasn't scripted. It was improvised, on the spot, because Lee was bored. The crew was setting up lights for the next shot, adjusting angles, dealing with technical problems that delayed filming for over an hour. Lee was standing in costume, waiting, twirling his nunchaku out of habit. It's something he did constantly, a nervous tick, a way to stay loose. But this time, someone from the crew noticed and said, "We should film that." Lee looked up, confused. "Film what?" "The spinning," they said. "The way you move the weapon without thinking. It's hypnotic." Lee shrugged, didn't think much of it, but when the cameras were ready, he did it again. No dialogue, no choreography, just Lee, his nunchaku, and a room full of extras trying not to flinch. One take, that's all it needed. And when Lee watched it back, he realized something. The spinning wasn't just flashy, it was intimidation. It showed control, precision, danger, all without a single punch thrown. So, he kept it in the film, and that one improvised moment became one of the most iconic images of Bruce Lee's career. People copied it, referenced it, turned it into memes decades later. But it started because Lee got bored waiting for a lighting setup. Sometimes the best moments aren't planned, they're just lived. And Bruce Lee lived every second in front of that camera, whether it was rolling or not. Number 8. The fight choreography in The Way of the Dragon didn't follow the rules of traditional kung fu cinema. Most martial arts films in the early 1970s used the Peking opera style, wide stances, exaggerated movements, theatrical strikes designed to look impressive from a distance. Bruce Lee hated it. He thought it was fake, flowery, disconnected from how real fighting worked. So when he choreographed the fights in The Way of the Dragon, he threw out the playbook. No spinning kicks for no reason. No dramatic pauses mid-fight, no opponents waiting politely for their turn to attack. Instead, Lee designed combat that felt efficient, brutal, and unpredictable. He studied footage of real street fights, boxing matches, and his own sparring sessions. He broke down what actually worked and what was just for show. Then he built fight scenes that prioritized speed, directness, and devastating impact. When Tong Lung fights in the park, he doesn't strike elegant poses. He moves in, strikes hard, and gets out. When he faces multiple opponents, they don't line up and attack one by one. They swarm him, and he adapts. The Colosseum fight with Chuck Norris is even more revolutionary. It's not just a showcase of technique, it's a conversation. Two fighters feeling each other out, testing, learning, adjusting. There's no music during the fight, just the sound of breathing, grunting, fists hitting flesh. It's intimate, raw, and more intense than anything audiences had seen. Lee didn't just change how martial arts looked on screen, he changed what it meant. Fighting wasn't a dance, it was survival, and every punch in The Way of the Dragon carried that weight. Number 9. Bruce Lee spoke 4 languages: Cantonese, English, Mandarin, and some basic Hakka, but not Italian. And that became a massive problem during production. The Way of the Dragon was shot in Rome, with Italian locations, Italian extras, and Italian crew members who didn't speak a word of English or Cantonese. Communication was a nightmare. Lee would give directions in English. His assistant director would translate into Cantonese for the Hong Kong crew. Someone else would try to translate into broken Italian for the local crew. By the time the message reached everyone, it was garbled, incomplete, or completely wrong. During one fight scene in a restaurant, Lee wanted the extras, Italian actors playing gangsters, to react with fear when Tang Lung walked in. He demonstrated the emotion, showed them what he wanted, and assumed they understood. They didn't. When the cameras rolled, the extras stood there, blank-faced, unsure of what to do. Lee called cut, frustrated, and tried explaining again. Still nothing. Finally, Lee gave up on words. He walked up to one extra, grabbed him by the collar, stared him down with a look so intense the man actually flinched. Then Lee pointed at the camera and said, "Do that." The extra nodded, terrified. And when they rolled again, the fear was real. Because Bruce Lee didn't just direct with words. He directed with presence, with energy, with sheer force of will. The language barrier never fully went away. But Lee learned to communicate in a way that transcended words, through movement, through intensity, through the undeniable understanding that when Bruce Lee wanted something, you gave it to him. Or, you got out of the way. Number 10. The Way of the Dragon had no safety coordinators, no stunt pads, no insurance, and no backup plan if someone got hurt. Because Hong Kong cinema in the 1970s didn't work that way. You showed up, you fought, and if you got injured, you kept filming. Bruce Lee understood this. He'd been hurt before. Broken bones, torn muscles, cuts, bruises, all part of the job. But this time, he was the director, which meant when someone got hurt, it was his responsibility. And people got hurt. During a fight scene in an alleyway, one of the stunt performers missed his mark and slammed face first into a brick wall. Blood poured from his nose. The crew froze. Lee rushed over, checked him, made sure nothing was broken. Then he asked, "Can you keep going?" The performer nodded, still dazed. They shot the scene again. In another sequence, Lee accidentally kicked a fellow actor in the ribs, full contact, with enough force to crack bone. The man collapsed, gasping for air, couldn't breathe properly for several minutes. Lee apologized, genuinely shaken, but there was no time to stop. They had a schedule, a budget, and no margin for delays. So they wrapped the man's ribs, gave him painkillers, and kept shooting. Lee even hurt himself. During the Colosseum fight, he landed wrong on a jump, twisted his ankle, and kept fighting through the pain because they couldn't afford to shut down production. No ambulances, no insurance claims, no safety meetings. Just warriors beating the hell out of each other and calling it art. And somehow, it worked. Because The Way of the Dragon wasn't made with safety nets. It was made with sacrifice. And every bruise, every drop of blood, every broken rib, it's all there on screen, real and unfiltered. Number 11. The restaurant scenes weren't filmed in a real restaurant. They couldn't afford one. The production budget was tight, and Italian restaurant owners wanted too much money to shut down for filming. So, Bruce Lee found an abandoned building on the outskirts of Rome, gutted it, and turned it into a restaurant set. No professional set designers, just Lee and his crew hammering together tables, hanging lights, painting walls. It looked authentic on camera, but behind the scenes, it was falling apart. Tables wobbled, walls weren't secured properly. And during one fight scene where Lee crashes through furniture, a table collapsed too early, nearly taking out the cinematographer. They couldn't rebuild it, so they worked around the damage and kept shooting. The kitchen scenes were even worse. No running water, no electricity in certain corners, just practical lights they'd move from shot to shot. When extras needed to look like they were cooking, they faked it with cold pans and empty pots. But Lee didn't care about perfection. He cared about authenticity, and somehow, that fake restaurant felt more real than any polished Hollywood set ever could. Number 12. Bruce Lee didn't just direct the actors. He directed the food. In several scenes, characters are eating Italian cuisine, pasta, pizza, dishes that Hong Kong audiences had never seen before. Lee wanted it to look authentic, but none of his crew knew how Italians actually ate. So Lee studied locals in real restaurants, watched how they twirled pasta, how they held their forks, how they broke bread. Then he came back to set and taught his actors the exact movements. One actress couldn't get the pasta twirl right. Lee demonstrated it himself, over and over, until she mimicked it perfectly. Another actor kept eating too fast, making it look rushed and unnatural. Lee made him slow down, savor each bite, even though the food was cold and the takes were endless. By the end of filming, the Hong Kong cast could eat Italian food like Romans. It was a tiny detail most audiences would never notice. But Lee noticed everything, because to him, directing wasn't just about the big moments. It was about every single frame, every gesture, every bite of food. Nothing was too small to matter. Number 13. The famous cat screech sound effect, the one that plays when Bruce Lee scratches his face, wasn't in the original cut. Lee added it during post-production as a joke, a playful moment of self-awareness in an otherwise serious martial arts film. The studio hated it. They said it was silly, childish, that it would ruin the tone of the movie. Lee disagreed. He believed martial arts films took themselves too seriously, and a little humor would make the action more enjoyable, not less. So, he kept the cat screech, along with other comedic sounds, animal noises, exaggerated whooshes. The studio executives were furious. They threatened to cut the sounds themselves, release their own version. Lee called their bluff. He reminded them that he had final cut. That was the deal. They could complain all they wanted, but the movie was his. The sounds stayed. And when The Way of the Dragon premiered, audiences loved them. They laughed, they cheered, they quoted the moments endlessly. What the studio saw as a flaw became one of the film's most beloved quirks, proof that Bruce Lee understood his audience better than any executive ever could. Number 14. Chuck Norris didn't speak during the Colosseum fight, not because he couldn't act, but because Bruce Lee didn't want dialogue. He believed the fight should tell the story, not words. Two warriors meeting, testing each other, respecting each other, all communicated through movement, through glances, through the rhythm of combat. But there was another reason for the silence: Norris's voice. Lee worried that if Norris spoke, it would break the illusion. His American accent, his cadence. It didn't match the world Lee had built. So instead of writing around it, Lee simply removed all dialogue from the scene. No greetings, no threats, no final words. Just two men, face to face, letting their fists do the talking. Norris later admitted he was relieved. He was nervous about acting, about delivering lines convincingly, but fighting, that he could do. And without dialogue, the scene became timeless, transcending language barriers, cultural differences. You didn't need subtitles to understand what was happening. You just watched and you felt it. That's the power of Bruce Lee's vision. He didn't need words to tell a story. He just needed truth. Number 15. The film's score was composed by Joseph Koo, but Bruce Lee rejected most of it. Koo had written sweeping orchestral pieces, dramatic strings, traditional Chinese instruments, the kind of music you'd expect in a martial arts epic. Lee listened once and said no. Too big, too distracting, too much. He wanted the fights to breathe, to let the sound of fists and feet carry the scenes. So he cut the music from most of the action sequences, leaving only ambient sound, breathing, impacts. The Colosseum fight, the most important scene in the film, has no score at all until the very end. Just silence, violence, and two fighters locked in combat. Koo was offended. He'd worked hard on the compositions, poured his soul into the music, but Lee didn't budge. He explained that in real fights, there's no orchestra, there's no soundtrack, just the sound of your heartbeat and your opponent's breath. That's what he wanted audiences to hear. Koo eventually understood, and years later, he admitted Lee was right. The absence of music made the fights more intense, more immediate, more real. Number 16. The Way of the Dragon was released in Hong Kong first, and it shattered records. It became the highest-grossing Hong Kong film of all time, surpassing Lee's previous movies, surpassing everything. Lines wrapped around city blocks. Theaters added midnight screenings. It ran for months, and audiences kept coming back. Bruce Lee had proven something that Hollywood never believed, that he could write, direct, and star in a film, controlling every aspect, and still deliver a massive hit. But success came with pressure. Golden Harvest immediately wanted a sequel. Producers wanted to lock him into a multi-picture deal. Other studios offered him blank checks to direct whatever he wanted. Lee said no to all of it. He didn't want to repeat himself, didn't want to become a formula. He'd proven he could direct. Now he wanted to do something bigger, something more ambitious. So instead of making The Way of the Dragon 2, he started developing Game of Death, a film with an entirely different structure, philosophy, and visual language. It would be his masterpiece, the culmination of everything he'd learned, but he never finished it, and The Way of the Dragon remained his only completed directorial effort. Number 17. The American release was a disaster, not because of the film itself, but because the distributors had no idea how to market it. They changed the title to Return of the Dragon, even though it wasn't a sequel to anything. They cut scenes, rearranged the order, and dubbed it with voice actors who sounded nothing like the original performers. Bruce Lee's voice was replaced with a generic tough guy American accent that stripped away all his personality, all his charm. The comedy was lost. The rhythm was destroyed. And worst of all, the film was released after Lee's death in 1973, turning it into a posthumous cash grab rather than a celebration of his vision. Critics who saw the American version dismissed it as another cheap kung fu movie. They didn't understand what they were watching, didn't realize it was directed by Lee himself, didn't recognize the innovation buried beneath the bad dubbing. It took decades for the original version to reach Western audiences, and when it finally did, critics reassessed. Suddenly they saw the genius, the craftsmanship, the revolutionary approach to action cinema. But by then, Bruce Lee had been gone for years, never knowing that his directorial debut would eventually be recognized as a landmark film. Number 18. Bruce Lee had a rule on set: no wasted takes. Film stock was expensive, time was limited, and he expected everyone to be ready when cameras rolled. If an actor messed up a line, if a stunt didn't land perfectly, if anything went wrong, Lee would stop, reset, and do it again. But he wouldn't tolerate carelessness. During one scene, an extra missed his mark 3 times in a row, ruining 3 takes. Lee didn't yell, didn't scream. He just walked over, looked the man in the eye, and said quietly, "If you're not ready to be here, leave." The extra stayed, nailed the next take. That was Lee's style: direct, firm, no room for excuses. But he applied the same standard to himself. If he felt his performance wasn't good enough, he'd demand another take, even if everyone else thought it was perfect. During the final confrontation, Lee reshot a single kick 7 times because he didn't like the angle of his foot. The crew was exhausted, ready to move on, but Lee refused to compromise. 7 takes for 1 kick, because in his mind, if it wasn't perfect, it wasn't worthy of the screen. Number 19. After The Way of the Dragon wrapped, Bruce Lee never directed another film, not because he didn't want to, but because he ran out of time. He immediately started working on Game of Death, shooting the iconic yellow tracksuit fight sequences in the tower. But then Hollywood came calling. Warner Brothers offered him Enter the Dragon, a chance to star in a major American production with a real budget, real distribution, real global reach. Lee couldn't say no. He put Game of Death on hold, flew to Hong Kong to shoot Enter the Dragon, and poured everything into it. But the stress, the pressure, the physical toll, it was destroying him. He collapsed on set, suffered headaches, seizures, fainting spells. Doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong. And on July 20th, 1973, just weeks before Enter the Dragon hit theaters, Bruce Lee died. He was 32 years old. Game of Death remained unfinished later, cobbled together with body doubles and unused footage. And The Way of the Dragon became his only complete directorial work, a snapshot of his vision, his voice, his uncompromising belief that martial arts cinema could be something more. Number 20. The Colosseum fight changed action cinema forever. Before The Way of the Dragon, fight scenes were spectacle. After, they were storytelling. Lee proved that combat could have a narrative arc, that fighters could have a conversation without words, that action didn't need to be mindless. Filmmakers studied that scene, broke it down frame by frame, tried to understand what made it work. The Matrix, Kill Bill, John Wick, every modern action film owes something to what Bruce Lee did in that ancient arena. He didn't just film a fight, he created a template, and more than 50 years later, directors are still chasing what he captured in a single afternoon with no permits, no safety gear, and no second chances. Because Bruce Lee didn't make The Way of the Dragon to entertain. He made it to prove something. That martial arts were art, that action was expression, that a fight, done right, could move you as deeply as any dramatic scene. And in that crumbling Roman amphitheater, he succeeded. Bonus fact: Bruce Lee kept one prop from the Way of the Dragon. Not his nunchaku, not his costume, but Chuck Norris's chest hair. During the Colosseum fight, Norris fought shirtless, and Lee, in a moment of playful aggression, actually ripped out a small tuft during one grappling sequence. The cameras caught it, and Lee loved it so much he kept it in the film. But off camera, he apparently kept the hair itself, tucked it into a small envelope, and wrote on it, "Chuck's dignity." Norris found out years later and laughed, called it the most Bruce Lee thing imaginable. Because even in his most serious moments, even when creating his masterpiece, Lee never forgot to have fun, to be playful, to remind everyone that at the end of the day, they were making movies. And that should always be a little bit ridiculous.
Action!